Okay, we're now recording. So what we're going to do first is we're going to go through the first 5 weeks of discussion questions so I can tell you what I want you to know. And then you will tell me if you have any questions about those things, and I can show you the PPTs and we can discuss it. We'll try to keep this, hold on a second, excuse me for a moment. We'll try to keep this to about 20 minutes if we can. Okay, let's see, where did I put this? Here we are. Okay, just want to make sure I have your test so I know exactly what's on. Are there any questions before we begin? Okay, then let's get started. Okay, so this is the first questions for our first week. I'm not going to go through every question. I'm just going to kind of tell you what I want you to study. So 5 basic functions of management, 5 basic functions of staffing, that's HR, that's important to me. 3 additional functions, that's important to me. I mean, this is what is HR. You know, and definitely for the midterm, you have to be able to explain what is HR. All this stuff about power, you know, what I need you to know, because there's a lot of stuff about power. The real thing I'd like you to know, for one, what is line and staff authority? And I generally like you to know about these power tactics. You know, this idea of in HR, I don't need you to know like the basis of power, formal power, personal power, you know, but the general idea of in HR, we're dealing with power. Why? You know, if I said to you, why are we dealing with power? I expect you to be able to explain that HR has to do with power because people come to us with their problems. That's one reason. And we help them to resolve their problems. There's a lot of power in that. Then there's also, we hire people, we fire people, we promote people, we punish people. I mean, all of that stuff is stuff that we're doing in HR, and all of that is related to power. Do we have line authority or staff authority? Right? We have both, really, is the answer. Usually, we probably have staff authority, and you have to understand what that means. We have staff authority. Again, if you guys have questions, just start talking. Just unmute yourself and ask, or else I'm just going to keep going. So we do have staff authority. You know, why do people depend on us? Because we hire them, we fire them, we promote them, we punish them. You know, and then just this idea of how do we influence people? What's the proper ratio of staff members to employees? I think you should know that. Operating budget, I think you should know that. Small, large company, trends, all of this stuff with trends, I'm not really too concerned about. You know, this idea of what are the challenges and what are the trends. I think that's pretty good to be able to give a background. You definitely should know what is a KPI. HR scorecard and digital dashboard, you should probably be able to explain at least what a digital dashboard is. So, you know, that's pretty much what I'm looking for in this first topic. So generally speaking, number 1, what is HR? Number 2, what is power? How do we influence people in HR? And then number 3, what are some trends and challenges affecting HR? And I guess number 4, what's a digital dashboard and a KPI? Any questions on that? No? Okay.
Could you remember us about those trends?
Sure. Open another folder. I mean, pretty much they're the trends that are going to be in any of the classes you talk about. So economics is going to be a trend. Technology is going to be a trend. Demographics. What do we mean by demographics? Somebody tell me what demographics means.
Age, gender.
Those are examples of demographics. What does demographics mean? It means how the workforce changes. So age, people get older. Gender, we have more women in the workplace. Ethnicities, you have more people from other countries. You know, there's always another trend is pretty much always globalization, right? So this is going to be the same in any of the classes that you're studying, that these are some of the trends: diversity, technology, globalization, and economy, and workforce projections. Now, I'm not expecting you to necessarily talk about exactly what's going on in the world at this moment. You can speak in general, but those are the trends. Nicola, is that clear?
Yes, yes. Thank you.
Sir, I have a question.
Yes.
So for HR scorecard is like measures the HR's effectiveness by using the graph and chart, but is digital dashboard more broad than HR scorecard? Is it more like detailed one?
So the digital dashboard is what we would call the computer program, right? That is the computer program. It's not more or less broad. It's like saying a spreadsheet and Excel. So Excel is the program on which we look at spreadsheets. A digital dashboard is the program on which we look at HR scorecards.
Okay.
So they're not more or less broad. One is the computer software and one is what we're looking at, which is this balanced scorecard idea that we're looking at. It's balanced. So we're looking at the employee and their productivity, efficiency, effectiveness, satisfaction, all that stuff. We're also looking at financial things. How much did they sell? How much did they make? Their profitability. So it's balanced. Okay. Let's go on to discussion questions number 2. And this is all the stuff about law. So what do you absolutely have to know? Well, for one, I can tell you sexual harassment. You know, what is sexual harassment? What are the forms of sexual harassment? Responsibilities of an employer or an employee in sexual harassment. I expect you to know that stuff. The difference between BFOQ and business necessity, definitely. That's really, really important to me. Pre-employment questions, what can and can't be asked, very important to me. Adverse impact versus adverse effect, sure. 4/5 rule, I don't think you have to know it because I think you know that's a little confusing, but if you know it, that's great. Can anybody explain it to me? What's the 4/5 rule?
It's like
It's go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Anais, what's the 4/5
It's
rule?
when, for example, a test negatively impacts 1/4 or 1/5 of a group differently.
What percentage?
20%.
Okay, good. So when some policy at a company negatively impacts 20% of the applicants in, you know, and it's in a group. So if 100 people apply for this job, let's say 100 white men apply for this job and 80% don't get the job and 20% get the job, that is pretty much prima facie evidence of discrimination. Adverse impact, not adverse effect. So I want you to be able to understand what is adverse impact versus adverse effect. Pre-employment questions. Now let's go back to all of these different laws. What do I want you to know? So disparate impact, same thing. Adverse or disparate is the same thing. Disparate impact, disparate effect. Yeah, I just said I want you to know that. Civil Rights Act 1866, I mean, nobody uses this in court anymore. This is more to understand the history of where it came from. Is discrimination acceptable? I mean, I think, you should understand that generally. BFOQ, I already had that down below. That's important to me. The FLSA is important. Exemption, who is exempt and why? No, you don't need to know that. Equal Pay Act, yes. Comparable worth, no. Title VII, definitely. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, the EEOC, yeah, probably. Age discrimination, I'd say so. OSHA, the Occupational Safety and Health Act, sure, why not? Vocational Rehab Act, sure, let's make that, that's fun. Reasonable accommodation, sure, that's fun too. Undue hardship, that'll be great. Pregnancy discrimination, yeah, let's put that in. ADA, yeah, definitely. And how about the Civil Rights Act? Sure, how about that? How about business necessity? That's a good one, right? That's fun. Okay.
You forgot the 4/5 rule. 24. Just highlight everything. I mean,
I didn't highlight anything, everything. Although I have to say, when I was in school studying law, all my friends would make fun of me because I highlight everything. I would just go through highlighters. Okay, so pretty much what am I saying here? Number one, the laws. Number two, pre-employment questions. Number three, BFOQ business necessity. Number four, sexual harassment. Got that? Number one, the laws. Number two, pre-employment questions. Number three, BFOQ and business necessity. So what do I mean by this? What's another way to say this? Defenses, right? This is how a company defends itself against a case of discrimination. And then number four, sexual harassment. Any question? Yep. Any question? Looking through it? You understand disparate impact and disparate treatment? It's the same thing as adverse impact, adverse treatment. They're the same thing. Then we have BFOQ. I should take this away because I have it below.
is OSHA for non-exempt jobs only?
Nope, OSHA's for every job.
For everything? Right.
I think OSHA still has a requirement of how many people have to work at the company. If you have a company with 2 people, they can't sue under OSHA. I can check how many people you need in the company. I would not test you on a detail like that. Okay. Standards, yeah, anything else about OSHA? Nope, I don't think I wrote how many people you need. Okay. Okay, well, if there are no other questions, let's go on to topic number 3. Okay, so now we're talking about strategic management. So with strategic management, obviously, I need you to explain what it means. What is strategic management? And when we talk about strategic management, really the key idea here is that it's always related to goals. Right? Traditional HR was just, hire people, try to get the best people you can. That's it. Fire people if you have to, give them a promotion if they're good, give them a punishment if they're bad, handle paying people. But in modern HR, it's much more strategic, which means it's related to the goals of the company. I'd like you to know generally the strategic management process, More, I really care about how is HR involved. You know, I don't care about the management stuff for this class, but how is HR involved in SWOT? How is HR involved internally and externally? How does HR involve, how are they involved in taking mission statements and moving them towards strategic goals? How is HR involved in establishing benchmarks? All of this other stuff you don't need to know. All of that management stuff that we did was review, related and unrelated, diversification, forward, backward, integration, Porter's 3 strategies, any of that stuff is not on the test. I just want to know how HR is involved in strategy. Any questions on that? Okay. Next topic. Okay, so now we're talking about job analysis. And remember, this had 2 parts, right? So the first part was job analysis, and the second part is workforce planning and recruiting. So for job analysis, the first thing, obviously, you need to know what is job analysis. You do not have to know any of the traditional stuff. You know, that's just for your understanding. Why is it important? It's important because it's important. What's the difference between a job description and job specification? Sure, that's important. How do we get information for a job analysis? And this isn't anything surprising. It's interviews, questionnaires, surveys, observations, just talking to people, watching people, asking people. That's really mostly how we find out information. What are the benefits and drawbacks of interviews, questionnaires? I don't need you to know benefits and drawbacks of all these things. However, I do need you to know, like, what is a job description? What is a job specification? You know, what are in them? Definitely, I need you to know job requirements matrix, job profile competency model. I care a lot about that. KSAP, KSAO, you need those for a competency model. So that's the first part. In terms of, before we can recruit people, we need to really understand the job. You just can't recruit people if you don't know what the job really is. So we have the job analysis that's broken into 2 parts, job description, job specification. For those, we have job requirements matrix and competency model. Both of those require understanding what is a KSAP. Job profile, I'm not really concerned about. I'm asking you more about the job description and the job specification. Then for recruiting, you know, I said there are 9 steps, and I need you to know those 9 steps. You do need to know succession planning, right? In general, you need to know what is forecasting, right? Really, this is step 1, step 2. Personnel replacement chart, I mean, that's pretty useful. The purpose of internal recruiting, what is a job board? You should know how to do internal and external recruiting, applicant tracking system. Anything else? What is the purpose of application forms? That should be obvious. Legal issues, interview methods, the 3 steps of the interview method, that's important. What do we look for when reviewing someone's application? I mean, that's part of interviews, I guess I'd say. What are the 5 kinds of interview questions? So, you know, I want you to understand these 9 steps, and I want you to understand interviews. Like, what are the 3 steps of the interviews? What do we look for on their application? And what are the kinds of questions we can ask them? Any questions on that? I guess I would add, what is workforce?
Yeah,
plan?
can we review the competency model?
Sure. Oh wait, that's 4A. So these are our 9 steps, just since we have this open, right? We start with workforce and succession planning, then forecasting. Then we have our planning system, which is looking at the available people in our a community or a city or whatever, then internal recruiting, then external recruiting, then diversity recruiting, then using application forms, creating effective advertisements, and then interview preparation. So that's what we're talking about. Oh, maybe competency model was the
Well,
other.
for internal recruiting, that basically means like training people you already have in the company, right?
Yes, training them or finding the ones who are available, the ones who should be promoted, or even just advertising to them. You know, a lot of companies just don't even advertise to the people available in their company. So what is a competency model? It's generally a chart that looks like this, and it goes on the bottom from very broad, like the broad base, to very narrow at the top. And what we're talking about on the bottom is we just have like the name of the job. So human resource manager, for example. Then we have above that foundation competencies. So these are our competency categories. Now, there's no exact competency model. Okay, the one for a restaurant waiter is going to be very different for an accountant. Competency models can be made however you want, but generally they're going to include these categories. One will be core competencies. And a core competency is something that everybody in the company should have. So what's a skill that everybody in CIP should have? You know, Naeem teaches a very different class from me, and I teach a very different class from Cecilia. But there are some core competencies that we should all have. For example, teamwork. We should definitely have a similar philosophy that we support diversity in education. It doesn't matter what you teach at CIP. That's part of the core competency, the skills required by everyone. Then, in addition to the core competencies, you also have functional competencies. These are job-specific skills. Now, the skills of Yiling or Mei-Ling are going to be very different than the skills of Naeem. They need different skills. And that's about being that's about the KSAPs for each individual job. You're also going to have leadership competencies, things like decision-making, things that determine whether or not you would be a good leader, motivation skills, communication skills, teamwork skills, organization and delegation skills. A lot of this goes back to the idea of management, you know, the FAILS idea of planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. Anything else I want to say? So it's different than a job description because a job description is a general summary of skills required for a job. A competency model usually includes behaviors. So this is why for a job description, we have this job requirements matrix. There's nothing in here about your behaviors or personality. It's all just tasks. It's all just the things you need to do. It doesn't say the kind of person we want. If you had a job requirements matrix at CIP, it would never say support diversity. Why? Well, how much of your time is spent supporting diversity? Can I even ask that question? Juan, can I ask at CIP for Mei-Ling, how much of her time is spent supporting diversity? Does that question make sense?
Well, it's a bit confusing, but
Does she spend, would you say her job, let's say she is administrative assistant, would you say her job has more time spent supporting diversity than me, than my job, teacher? I mean, can we really compare these things? It's just, we can't really say how important is believing that students should be diverse for Mei-Ling or me. It's 100% for all of us. You know, it's just not in this. This is about tasks. This is about what you do. Where the competency model is much more about, some of it is foundations, what you do, but the job, the competency model for me as a teacher is going to be very different from Mei-Ling. We have different areas of knowledge we need. We're in different roles. We have different competencies. What's going to be the same between Mei-Ling and I? the core competencies. That's going to be the same. Both of us do need to have teamwork or good communication or a positive attitude or believe in diversity. We'll need some similar core competencies. Functional competencies will be totally different. Leadership competencies will be different. Roles will probably be different. So I consider a competency model to be more about the job specification than just the job description. Is that any more clear?
Yeah, that pretty much answers it.
Okay, is there anything else on recruitment? It should be clear, right? The 9 steps, and then I want to know about interviews. Okay, and then the final topic. Where's job analysis here? No, I didn't write this correctly. This would be selection. Okay, so selection. What is negligent hiring? I think you should know that. How is testing used? Now, here's really what we're talking about here, right? We're talking about tests. What are pre-employment questions? What are employment tests? Advantages, disadvantages, I don't think you need to talk about that. Definitely, I need you to understand reliability and validity. I mean, that's a really big part of this. Generalizability, how should tests be administered? That idea of administered, standardized. Security, I don't need you to know. Test formats, yeah, I guess. Then I definitely need you to know the basic types of tests: psychology, personality, cognitive, motor, projective, motor, physical. You should know global competency, Big 5. And then this is more stuff about interviews. So we already talked about interviews, but you know, we talked about it again here, like the structure of an interview and then the types of interview questions. It's the same as for the previous one. And then I do like mistakes and biases. I often talk about that. Anything else?
What is the official definition of negligent hiring?
To hire someone carelessly. What would that mean?
That doesn't sound too incriminating though. Like negligent hiring sounds like it's always wrong, but to hire someone carelessly doesn't sound like it's always wrong.
Well, what does careless mean when we talk about hiring? How do you be careful?
Oh, you give tests, there's selection process.
Okay, so one way to be careful when you're hiring somebody is maybe to test their skills. How else could you be careful in hiring someone?
You administer tests.
Yeah, you said that. Anybody else?
Oh, same thing.
How do you
Okay.
be careful?
Background check.
Okay, you could do a background check. That would help you to be careful to make sure that they're good. How else could you be careful?
References.
Sure, you could check their references. You could give them an interview. You could check to see, do they have a family relationship with anybody? You could check to make sure, how did they find out about the job? You know, like that's how you be careful. Now, Misha, if I hire someone with no test, no interview, no background check, no references, and I don't know how they learned about the job, is it shocking if they then did a terrible job?
But if they do a good job, is it still negligent hiring?
Yes, but nobody's going to sue me for it.
Okay.
If they're doing a good
That
job.
was my question.
Sure. It's negligent, but nobody's going to sue me. But yeah, I mean, if you're careless, these are the things we need to do to be careful. Okay, so what is negligent hiring? Then what is pre-employment versus employment tests? What is reliability? All about validity, generalizability, administration, standardization, formats, and then I want to know the basic types of tests. And then once we're done with this, we are now going to have our presentation about projective personality tests, and I think they're talking about global competency and the big five. So we'll talk about all of those. So are there any questions? Remember, this one I'm serious about. Common interview mistakes and biases. Put a little star on that. I care about that. No, no questions?
Sorry, the biases, is that like the wrong question that we asked to the applicant?
What, biases?
Yeah.
No, a bias is when you lean one way or the other way. When you have a belief, not based on what they say necessarily. So what kind of opinion? That was Jody who asked, right?
Yeah.
Okay, let me find you. Where's Jody? Jody, if you are interviewing people for a job, what kind of opinion might you have of people before they even come in?
The people have to have like the same goal with the company.
Yeah, that's not really what I mean. What if somebody was from your same high school? Would that make you like them more?
It should be not.
What if they were your best friend? What if it was your sister? What if it was a beautiful model, the most beautiful person you've ever seen? Might that influence you?
Yeah, it should be not.
What if it was Ivanka Trump? Would that influence you?
Probably yes.
What if you had your boss, I'm your boss, and I said, Jody, we need 2 people today. You hire them today or you're fired. Is that going to influence you?
Yeah, because
What if you
under
didn't see
tension.
anybody good today?
I don't know. I don't know how to say.
I mean, I'm gonna fire you if you don't take somebody, so probably you're gonna take somebody. These are biases. These are things that influence you. It's not about what they say or if they're good for the job. It's just things that influence us, like how someone looks. You know, if it's 5:55 and you want to go home because tonight you're going to watch your favorite movie with your best friend and he just got pizza and the pizza's getting cold and I come in, Christine comes in for an interview. Are you going to be as careful with her interview as you were with someone at 10 o'clock in the morning? Maybe not, because you want to get home. It's going to influence you. These are all the things that influence us, are biases. And we should know about this before we start interviewing people, that I should know when it gets close to 6 o'clock, I have a bias. I should know that if somebody's beautiful, what if somebody comes in and shakes your hand really hard and it hurts your hand? You might have a judgment about that.
Yeah.
You know, what if somebody comes in and they're wearing a $10,000 suit? What if somebody comes in and they smell bad? You know, what if somebody comes in and they're dressed badly? All of these things influence us. So we got to think about it when we're thinking about hiring people. Is that clear?
Yes.
Okay, are there any other questions? Okay, good. Then our review part is over. Now what we're going to do is we have a presentation of Bella, Camila, and Chloe. Are you guys ready?
Yep.
Great.
Yes.
Whose LinkedIn profile is well established, of course, to extend its professional contact list. There is also a last very nice features, that is the e-learning rubric.
And that would be Camila. So you guys will give the presentation, and other people, I would say this is one of the presentations you do want to take some notes on, because they're talking about selection tests. They're talking about the projective personality test. So let's make sure that you all understand what they mean. That's what I need you to understand. I don't need you to memorize all the tests. I need you to understand, what does projective personality test mean? Okay, so ladies, whenever you are ready. Any problem? Do you want me to unmute you?
Okay. Mm. Okay. Hello, everyone. Good morning and good evening. So today, Camila and I are going to present each of us two projective personality tests, and then Chloe is going to represent to you the GCI. Next slide, please. Yeah, the next one. Thank you. I'm going to first talk about MMPI, the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory. This is a psychological test that assesses personality traits and psychopathology. And this test is actually not for normal people. It is for people who are suspected of having mental health or other clinical issues. This test is nowadays administered in one of two forms, the MMPI-2, which has 567 questions, and the newer form, MMPI-2RF, which has less questions. But the older form is more commonly used because of the wider research base and the familiarity among psychologists. This test can only be given and interpreted by a psychologist who is trained to do so. So you cannot find this test online. You can only find maybe a few sample questions. And it is administered by computers nowadays, so there is no need for direct professional involvement during the administration. However, there is going to be an interview right after the test has been done, and then the computer scores the test result, and the psychologist will put both the interview results and the test results in that person's file. And this test is used for developing treatment plans and also screening job candidates, and it has many more usages. Here are a few examples of the test questions. As you can see, it is all in the true or false form. And this test is designed with 10 clinical scales, which assesses 10 major categories of abnormal human behavior. And as you can see, it includes behaviors such as schizophrenia or depression. And it also includes 4 validity scales that assesses the person's general test-taking attitude. Because some people might not want to take this test in a truthful manner. So people might underreport or overreport when they are taking the test. They might exaggerate or deny, and this is why they use the 4 validity scales. For example, the L validity scale, which stands for lie, is to identify the individuals who are deliberately trying to avoid answering the MMPI honestly. And they are often trying to make themselves look like a better person than they are. The F and FB, back F, are the same thing. They are just, the questions are spread in different parts of the test. And the F, it doesn't stand for anything. It is just intended to detect unusual or atypical ways of answering the test items. Like if a person wants to randomly fill out the test just to get it over with. And the psychologist or the computer can recognize the contradictory beliefs and self-descriptions throughout the questions. And if a person answers too many of these F and FB scales incorrectly, then it will invalidate the entire test, because it means the person has been randomly filling the test. And the K scale is designed to identify psychopathology in people who actually look normal, but this K scale wants to measure self-control in family and interpersonal relationships. Next slide, please. Thank you. The second test I want to talk about is the Myers-Briggs type, which I'm assuming most of you have taken this. This one is more like a questionnaire, a self-report questionnaire, and it indicates psychological preferences in how people perceive the world and make decisions. So this MBTI is constructed for normal people, unlike MMPI, and this test emphasizes the value of naturally occurring differences. It is actually trying to say that we all have the specific preferences that shape and form our interests and needs and values and motivations. And the creator of this test actually the creator of this test believed that there are two functions that people would approach everything with. It's either the rational and judging function or the irrational and perceiving function. And each of these functions can also be in either an introverted way or an extroverted form. Next one, please. Thank you. If you haven't taken the test yet, this is a sample of the questions of the test, and it gives you a phrase, and you can and you should choose in what level you agree with this phrase, how much you agree with this phrase, and how much it states the right thing about you. And then at the end, here you can see 8 letters that they stand for introversion, extroversion, sensing, intuition, thinking, feeling, judging, and perceiving. And at the end of the test, there is going to be a 4-letter test result for you. Next one, please. Thank you. This test is actually a tool that can gives you insight into what makes you you, and gives you an insight about what other people, why other people behave in a certain kind of ways, so you can understand other people better. You can identify your own likes and dislikes and understand which situations allow you to perform your best. And most of the websites that you take this test in, at the end, based on your test results, it might give you some suggestions about the job that you might perform in better. For example, it can say, I don't know, a certain type of people are better in arts, a certain type of people make good judges, etc. That is all.
Okay, so now I'll present the 4 structured completion tests, and the main purpose of this test is to identify the individual's attitudes and views about themselves, other people, and the world. And this is basically a 100-sentence theme, which means they give or provide the beginning of a sentence, and then the person has to complete it. And it's designed to elicit the respondent's view, again, according to themselves, their perception of the world, family, parents, and so on. So the interpretation they get from this test is basically the interpersonal figures, the wishes the person might have, like characteristics, attitude, and personality, causes of own, which could determine like if the person has some kind of depression, anxiety, and then the reactions. The second test is the House Tree Person, HTP, and the main purpose of this test is the diagnostic, judging personality, judging brain damage, and neurological functioning. And it's quite simple because the tester needs to provide 3 white papers, pencil, and anyone who's 3 years old or more can take it. And they will provide around 60 questions when they ask the person to draw a house, a tree, and a person. And they might ask like, draw a tree or like a house, and I will explain it. So the results of the interpretation are subjectives, which will be inferences of personality traits and past experiences. And it has little empirical evidence or support in terms of reliability and validity. And it's accurate measure for brain damage. They usually use this test for kids. So the house interpretation mainly will determine some like factors in the person's personality. According to the house size, roof, walls, activities, doors, weather, mountains, and lights. Usually when people suffer from some psychological issues, they might have darker colors, and they then the tree interpretation will be in terms of the branches, the trunk, leaves, roots, height, and it will also determine if the person has some psychological problems like depression or anxiety. And then the person interpretation will be according to the person itself, like heads, eyes, nose, teeth, ears, neck, arms, or feet. Some people might draw people without feet, without arms, and it usually means like they're missing something in their lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Camila. So I'm going to present you the GCI, the Global Competency Inventory. So this test have been created by the COSAC group. This test is a bit more different than all the others that we've seen, since it's not about type of personality, but it's more about the ability and the skills that a person is going to get in leading and managing a team or like people in a multicultural context. So it's going to be divided in 3 parts. The first one is the perception management. So in this part, the test is going to score how a person is judging others, how they are tolerating ambiguity between all the cultures that they can get in the team. Then the relationship management is more about how the people who is taking the test is able to create and to evolve and maintain their relationship in like a multicultural context. And then the final ability is the self-management. And this one is more about the self-awareness that the people have about stress and pressure in their working environment. Next slide, please. Thank you. So this test is valid and reliable for most of the below points. It is super important and like useful for HR, since it can help in recruiting and hiring decision. It also helps for the development for managers, and it's a super nice measurement of the leading competencies. Next slide. Thank you. So here is a part of the report you can get. So you have like the big title of relationship management, and then you're gonna get some under smaller parts, and you get a score between 1 and 7. 1 is super low and 7 is super high, and then you get like an average score about all the abilities that you went through before. And so it gives you like a more, not a personality, but more a profile type. And the report also provides you some like points where you can improve yourself if you have like special goals to reach. And that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. One last thing though, one of you three, can you tell us what is a projective personality test?
I think this is this test. These tests are used to reveal the hidden emotions and like the conflicts inside the person who is taking the test, and even if he or she is trying to be defensive and is trying not to take the test in a way that shows those conflicts and feelings, there are still like scales, as I mentioned in these tests, that would show them.
Okay. So I don't know if everybody kind of got that, but I do need you to be able to explain what a projective personality test is. And it is kind of, as Bella said, it's a test that looks for your hidden personality, the things you can't cheat on, to find out about who you really are. Not your IQ, not your EQ, but who you really are as a person. Okay, if there are no questions, then we will continue on with our main lesson, and that right now is training. So let me share my screen. Get rid of this stuff. Okay, last class we only talked about the Carter Cleaning Company, and we did that little activity. We talked about one of their problems is that they have people, their employees don't say have a nice day. Their employees don't check the clothes very carefully. They have problems with the employees don't really know their policies. They don't maintain a clean workplace. Some of the employees were angry that they didn't get paid on Friday. They got paid on Monday. They should have known stuff like that. And so we talked about how we would train the employees in the Carter Cleaning Company. So let's start now with the first part of training, which is orientation. So when you came to Donghua University, you did get some kind of orientation, right? When you came to CIP. Now, I don't know exactly what you got. I know there was some sort of dinner or party for new students, you know, but generally when we're in class together, I would discuss this question of how would you create an orientation for incoming students? You know, now that you've done it, can you give me a suggestion here? How about Anais? What's something you would do to welcome new students to CIP?
I think what we did when I was a new student was really great. We actually had a party, but even before that, I didn't really feel like I needed an orientation just because everyone was so welcoming. So if I had to do something, I think I would do the same thing. You know, it's college, so probably just have a party and have people talk to you and meet people. And eventually, once you make friends, then these are the people that are going to orient you, basically. I don't think
Okay,
there should be a formal thing.
that's good. Anybody have any other formal things you would do for new students at CIP? No? Constance, is there anything you would do? Or do you think it was fine the way they had it so far? You're muted.
For university, I think it was like all right.
Okay. All right. I mean, the other question about orientation is because for a job, there are a couple of things we need to achieve for orientation. One of the things is we need to give a background. So you guys are saying you had a party and you met people, you know, but for a job, we need to give people a background about what they need to perform their jobs. So when you got an orientation to the school, did that really tell you how much work you're going to be doing in this school? Did you get a clear idea of the amount of work? Now, maybe that doesn't matter to you, but I would guess that at a party, nobody said to you, hey, here's how much work you're going to be doing per week, just so you know. But that's pretty important. So we call this onboarding. And this is part of this idea of socialization. So socialization is becoming part of the culture or part of the group to understand the attitudes, the standards. So when you came into CIP, if you had a party, that would let you know some of our attitudes, which is we believe in everybody having fun and getting to know each other. We're not that serious, that everybody needs to, you know, wear a tie or come and be so serious and sit at a desk. And, you know, what are our values? What are our patterns of expected behavior? Those are things we can convey with a party. But there's another question about socialization, which is when you came to CIP, you must have had some expectations before you came to China. Camila, what was one expectation you had before you came to China?
Like real expectation?
Yeah, like something you expected.
I'm quite sure because I already knew China, so I didn't really have any expectation, like more
Okay.
than I knew.
What about Jonathan? Did you have any expectations?
I lived here before I went to CIP, but generally, when I came here the first time, only negative expectations, to be honest.
Okay. Let's
Oh.
see, who's somebody who came directly here.
It turned around though. I like it now, or I liked it. Pretty much gone
I
now,
mean,
but-
that's good. Look, a lot of people
Yeah.
feel that way. It's very common to have negative expectations. China is portrayed in a lot of negative ways as a very backwards place. And in fact, when you live there, you know, you realize there's a lot of benefits. Certainly China has its problems, but so does anywhere. How about Chloe? Did you have any expectations before you came to China?
I knew China a bit, so I was just expecting that CIP was like way bigger than it is. Like in France, university, you have like thousands of students, and CIP is like more hundreds of. So I was
sure, and that's a really good example of the socialization process where someone has an expectation about whether it's a job or a new environment. And then when they come there, that they are surprised. And that's not great, right? Obviously, CIP should have been able to give everybody information on the size of the school or something like that so that nobody comes surprised. Now, maybe you're surprised and then after 6 months, you're happy because it's a small school. Who knows? You know, your opinion might change, but we generally don't want people to be surprised. And that's one of the reasons we have this orientation. So generally, there are 4 things we need in a good orientation. One, it sounds like CIP did, which is just to make you feel welcome. That's incredibly important. I've had jobs where I showed up and nobody said hello. They just told me, sit here. And it was very uncomfortable. And I've had other jobs where they welcomed me and it was very, very nice. The second is to understand the rules, policies, and procedures, right? This is the basic information we're giving to employees. Third, and this is really important, is to understand the past, present, and future, right? The culture, the vision, to really understand the organization. So I assume when you came to CIP, nobody told you. Can anybody tell me what year was CIP founded? What was the
Wasn't it
first
like
year of CIP?
2009 or something?
2009.
Sorry?
2009.
2009? I think it was later than that, but okay. How many students were in the first class?
Wasn't
Take
like
a
a,
guess.
just like a few less than 10, like 8,
Yeah. 7, I think.
7. Okay.
So, you know, I think maybe you're right, 2009, but, you know, we're talking about 2009, 7 students, like, and now at present, where are we? You know, how many students do we have? I mean, this semester is not very representative, but when I came, there were, you know, close to 400. What's the future? What's their culture? What's their vision? This is the kind of thing we want. Now, we could give everybody a student handbook. We could have a video that you can watch online. We could have a live meeting. There's lots of ways we could tell people this, but it's all pretty important. And then the attitudes and behaviors that we expect. How do we expect people to dress, to talk, to act? Is it okay if people are late? Do we expect people to be very friendly? Are people very serious? Is there a ton of homework? Does everybody hang out in the library? How do people make friends? You know, all of this stuff is really, really important in orientation. So these are our main purposes, right? Make the employee feel welcome, give them basic information like rules, policies, procedures, help them understand the culture, vision of the organization, and then explain to them socialization, how things are done here. Some people use a form. Forms can be very useful. So this would be for a manager. So the manager would make sure that the new employee has gone through this and they would sign their name after their initials after each place to make sure all these things have been done. Sometimes this is also done via orientation technology. Obviously, we could just put it all in an employee handbook. That's what a lot of companies do. They put it all in a handbook. And then these days, sometimes they give employees a quiz on the handbook. Do you think that's a good idea? Crystal, do you think it's a good idea to make employees take a quiz about the policies and procedures and the history of the company?
Not really.
Anybody think that's a good idea?
No, I don't think it's a good idea.
Why not?
I would say yes, it's a good idea because since that you will know that the person is probably someday he would breach the rules.
Okay, maybe. And who just said it was a bad? Crystal, you said it wasn't a good idea. Why not?
Because I feel that employee won't wait. Usually they are very long and yeah.
So you're assuming it would be boring.
Yes.
And there are many companies now trying to make it fun. That's a big thing these days of apps that they have on the phone to try to make this fun. And you can play like trivia night at a bar. So they'll take everybody to a bar and play CIP trivia or something like that. And then people can win a prize. There's more efforts to make it fun now because it can be very useful. With technology, we're generally talking about something on the internet. Maybe you have a drive that has videos on it. So you come to CIP and there's videos from Yiling or from the Dean of Donghua. You can watch that. IBM uses Second Life, which is a software where you can kind of virtually walk around the building. That is useful too. So all of that is orientation, the first part. Now that's when you get to the company. You are onboarded, right? You're onboarded. Now let's talk about once you've been at the company. how would you like to be trained? What would help you in your career? So tell me, let's say, Constance, what's a kind of training that you think would be useful in your career? Can you think of a training that we should have at CIP?
Anything that is practices related, like not only to base everything on the like theory through classes.
Can you give me an example?
Like small, like practical case study within like a, I don't know, a company. Like
Okay, so
that we can actually go there and like practice about a subject that we learn.
okay, I'm not sure I'd call that training, but maybe, sure, like on-the-job training at a company. Okay, Chandra, can you think of any other training that we could do?
I think sorry for my dog. Oh.
What's wrong with your dog? That's okay.
Just I don't want to disturb other people.
But it's funny.
Sorry. Okay. I think what university can do is like yeah, for example, if they teach certain like subject, for example, like business law, yeah, what we did last semester, it will be fun if like student can actually form or like court during class and be a judge and be a lawyer, like something like can be a role player, like as if you're working in a real company, not only BL class, but in other classes, like business related classes, we can be like, okay, form a group of people and you be a like an employer and you be employee, something like that. It'll be very practical once we be hired in the future.
That's interesting.
How about like, you know, cultural things, like how, for example, how to negotiate with Chinese companies or Chinese people in general?
That might be a useful training, sure. That could help you. Harry, anything you think we could train people in CIP?
I guess like maybe like technology training.
Sure, like using certain software?
Yeah.
I mean, that could be very useful if we train people in advanced Excel or using Photoshop or ArcGIS for cartography like Google Maps. Okay, I mean, those are all good suggestions of different kinds of training. You know, so with training, we're talking about giving people new knowledge and skills. And we want to understand the difference between training as it was in the past and training as it is today. So generally, what we're trying to do is to give people new knowledge and skills. And generally, it's meant to benefit their jobs, right? This influences effectiveness more than appraisal and feedback. So training is very, very important. It really has a lot to do with effectiveness. So traditionally, training was only for your job. So as a teacher, I would get training on how to teach or how to create a PPT or things like that, nothing else. And if you're a student, you would get training on time management or research skills and nothing else. That was traditional training, is it was only related to the job. However, in the modern world, we're using a lot more technology. We're talking a lot more about establishing a link between learning and performance. So would it help someone to learn something that is not directly related to their job? You know, would it help us to train students in negotiating with Chinese companies, even if that's not related to your classes? Sure, it would, right? And now, instead of training people on technical skills that are related to their job, we're talking a lot about soft skills, communication, team building, decision-making. And these are all modern things we want to train people in. So we might train the students in meditation or fashion design. Would that help us? Sure, it would help us in effectiveness in a lot of ways by making the students more interested, or having these go to a real job and be trained on the job, or have some sort of moot court or debate clubs where we could actually train people to debate and negotiate. And those are all good ideas. We had a debate club last year. I would like to start a moot court, which is to have those fake law cases. I think those are really fun. So I'd like you to know some of these modern trends in training. So what are some modern things that people are trying to do with training? Well, here's one trend. People expect a return on investment. And that's an important idea that we're going to come back to at the end of this subject. And that means people now expect that if they spend money on a training, it will make them money. They get an ROI, a return on investment. And as a trainer, we need to be able to measure that. I had said on the video that I wanted you guys to do for homework an actual training. I want you to really make a training. And I'll ask you to do that. I'd say not this week, because this week I think you should just get ready for the midterm. But when the midterm is over, then I'll ask you to do that. So when you're making a training, you need to be able to explain, based on your cost, how much will the company actually make? Now, of course, companies don't just make money from your training, but they make money based on increased efficiency, productivity, and effectiveness. There's a lot more cultural training or diversity training, things like how to work with sexual harassment, how to work with different ethnicities, how to work with different ages, how to work with different genders, and there are different kinds of training on that. There's shorter time frames for training. In the past, training might have taken 6 months, and these days training might take 6 days. Training has really been pushed down. There's a lot more meaningful training. So it's not just about how do you do your job better, it's about how do you be more satisfied at work and satisfied with your life. There's, as I said, a lot more technology training. And there's whole new categories of training. So in the past, training was mostly about skills, and now you might have training about childcare. Now, would it benefit somebody in a company to learn about childcare? Sure, it could benefit them a lot. What about basic medical health training? Would it be useful to you guys as students at CIP to have basic medical health training, to be able to identify different kinds of sicknesses and understand basic medicines or how to treat a basic illness or a cut or a bruise or a sprain? I think that might help students a lot. You know, it's the kind of thing that could make us a lot more effective. It's a whole new category of training. There's a lot more IT training as private companies are working with higher technology. With public companies, there's more of a succession training, this idea that we need to plan for the future for public companies or non-governmental organizations, NGOs, to behave more like the private sector. For senior managers, there's more work-life balance training. For researchers, there's more about culture and learning outcomes, that it's not just about pure research anymore. For HR, there's more about global HR or culturally specific practices. For educators, it's less just about teaching class and more about partnerships with other universities or other teachers. So all of these are different trends that are happening in the training world. So what are some different kinds of trainings? Obviously, there are still skills trainings. How do you use this machine? How do you type? How do you use Microsoft Excel? Obviously, there's still trainings. And there are things like product knowledge. There's safety training. There's now things like executive development. How do you be a better manager? And we could also call that managerial skills. There's quality training. How do you produce higher quality? Communications training, sales training, customer relations. I mean, there's lots and lots of different kinds of training. How much should a company spend on training? So how much money do you think, Juan, how much money do you think CIP should spend on training per semester? Give me a number.
Well, it depends on the number of students or teacher. I would say
thinking about the school right now.
Well, it's a little school, so I would say, I don't know, around 5,000 kwai.
5,000 kwai? Harry, do you agree with that number?
I'm not too sure. Maybe 5,000 is a bit low. The
Think
training.
so. I don't think you're going to get very good training for 5,000 RMB. You know, I think it's going to have to be more than that for good training. Generally, we don't pick a number, okay? Generally, we talk about percentages, right? So how much money should CIP spend? Well, typically, an organization spends about 2%. And as Juan said, that takes into account if you have more students, if you have less students, we're just talking about 2%. In most companies in America, total training could be about $700 per employee per year. So if you have 10 employees, you're talking about $7,000, which is probably more than you would guess. Training can be very expensive. Now, who should be trained? In the past, maybe only 10% of workers were trained. Only the absolute cream of the crop, the absolute best workers were trained. However, in modern organizations, almost 80% are trained. So the idea of training now is it's for everyone. Everyone gets to be trained because it's not just about learning a new skill. It's about being more effective and satisfied and having a more meaningful life. So everybody, now people get different training, right? There might be sexual harassment training and safety training and training in how to be more relaxed and calm at work. Maybe everybody gets that. And then the managers get other training and the senior managers get other training. And, you know, would you say that training is a benefit? Nicola, would you say that training is a benefit?
You mean like I'm giving the benefits to the employer?
No, like this would influence your decision on which job to take. Would you be more interested in a job that gave you more training?
Yes, yes, because training are expensive. Like if I go by myself to have a training, I don't know, in Excel, anything, any skills, it will be expensive. So if the company provides it to me, it's good.
Any other reasons? I mean, that's true. It's expensive. Christine, any other reasons that you might want to work at a place that gives you training?
Because you can then constantly develop your just skills, and yeah, it's just a good learning process. I think it's good to have it all in one and not like go to other avenues to get the training. Like if I want to learn CPR, I don't have to go to like another company to learn CPR. I can just get it at the company or the company I'm working at or a school.
Sure. Sure, so that's beneficial. Now, do you think, let me ask, who shall I ask? Ethan. Ethan, do you think it makes sense to train someone? Now, you've worked in management. Did you guys do training?
Yeah, there was a bit of training, like just more learning about how to deal with employees and like kind of working with and against the union, just kind of dealing with employees that are unionized.
Do you think it would have been beneficial to train people in subjects that you didn't do at that job?
Absolutely, because it just, I would believe it would make like a more, I think, well-rounded employee and somebody who can kind of advance themselves, and you want somebody who's going to like exceed your expectations and do a little bit more. You don't want to hold their hand the whole time. You don't want your manager or your employee coming, hey, should I do this? Should I do this? They can take the initiative, and then if they feel confident enough in themselves, if they've been kind of directed and focused with applicable training, then they're going to kind of do more for your company. You're not going to have to hold their hand.
Good. So that's true. Training also does build confidence. It builds a more well-rounded person, an employee all around. And in fact, even though it's counterintuitive, so it doesn't seem to make sense, In fact, if you train people for their next job, they're less likely to leave your company. So if you work in my company and you work in marketing, and I am willing to train you in advertising, even though I know you might take my training and leave my company, it still is beneficial for me for two reasons. Number one, you might choose to stay with my company for a little longer. Maybe you would do advertising at my company. Number two, even if you do leave, you're going to say positive things about my company. And then if other people ask you, you might say, yeah, David's company was great. They trained me in advertising. They didn't have to. They gave me that training for free. They knew I planned to leave and they still trained me. And that draws talent to your company. So there's a lot of benefits to have training. Now, one of the questions is, what's going to be our format? Should we train people face-to-face or should we train people online? Chloe, can you tell me a reason that it might be good to train people face-to-face in a classroom? Or it doesn't have to be a class, but in a room.
You make it more their attention, and you can follow like traditional way of trading, I guess, and people might be more like used to that kind of training, so they may feel like more comfortable about it.
Okay, Chloe, would you prefer to be trained face-to-face or virtually?
Face-to-face.
Okay. Anybody choose to be trained virtually? Would anybody prefer your training to be online? Nobody. What's a benefit of online training? Are there any benefits?
Really, actually, I have to say, I prefer it if it would be like, I mean, not really a training, but more like a presentation of some sort, where just somebody's like talking and you'll see a lot of slides. And I guess it really doesn't even matter if you're there or not, because like you're just looking at the slides and listening to the voice anyways. So if they have some good implementation with Zoom and like maybe multiple displays and whatever, they could make something like more digital, more informative out of their talk than they would be able to in real life.
Well, I mean,
so, yeah.
It's interesting. You guys are in a perfect situation, not perfect, but you guys are in the situation where you will see in the coming years how everything becomes more developed online. This whole Zoom culture of teaching online is obviously the programs are going to get better. The software is going to get better. Teachers are going to get more trainings on how to be more effective. So it's not, because right now this is a little bit static where I'm asking you questions, but it's not as engaging as it could be. But of course, a lot of companies want to use e-learning because they save so much money. They don't have to bring in a trainer. They don't have to use the room. They don't have to take everybody away from their jobs. You can just do it on the weekend or you can do it at home. And it's a lot easier for the companies to do it this way. So the benefits of training overall are huge, right? There's almost nothing that benefits people more than training, except certain things like motivation. So motivation is the absolute greatest thing we can do for our employees. And there's a lot of ways to motivate people. Primarily, we put it into two categories, intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, which we don't really talk about too much in HR because that's not really our job. But can someone tell me what's the difference? Crystal, what's the difference between intrinsic and extrinsic motivation?
This one I'm not sure.
Anais, can you tell me?
Can you repeat the question, please?
What's the difference between intrinsic and extrinsic motivation?
Extrinsic motivation is like it brings you something else, I think. I'm not sure.
Okay. So intrinsic is inside, extrinsic is external. External, internal. So what would be an external thing I could give somebody? It's something you could touch, money, for example. Money is external. It doesn't matter if you're having a great day or a bad day, money is money. And if you give somebody money, it motivates them. A car, insurance. You know, if I give you good health insurance, you love the job, you hate the job, it doesn't matter. Insurance is insurance. It's outside you. It is just something tangible, right? So, you know, a vacation, giving you more vacation days. You're happy, you're sad, you're nice, you're mean, you're good, you're bad. Vacation days are vacation days. These are all external. Having a really good manager, that's actually external too. It's anything that's outside you that you can't control. In HR, we have very limited ability to give this. We can give salary raises, but we usually need the manager's permission, but we are in charge of that. We can punish people. We can't really give more vacation or benefits like insurance. We don't really have that ability. You know, we give it to people when the management decides. They'll contact us, we'll give it to the people, but we don't make that decision. So external motivation is difficult. Internal motivation has to do with feelings. So making people feel good. Again, we don't really do this too much. You don't usually in HR call someone into your office and say, hey, Jonathan, welcome to HR. We just wanted to tell you you're doing a great job. That's not really HR's job to do that. That's your manager's job. So what we do in HR is we teach managers how to do it, but it's not our job to walk around the office and say, great job, buddy. That's the manager. We'll teach the manager to do it, but making someone feel supported, feel good. Now, of course, one thing you could do is just say nice things. Another thing you can do is give someone autonomy. So if I said, you know, hey, Chloe, I just want to let you know, currently you can come in anytime you want before 12. As long as you're going to work 8 hours, we don't care when you come in and when you go home. That might make her feel good, right? It's not something she can touch, but it is a motivation. Or we might say, you know what, you've been doing this job for 6 months, Chloe. We're not going to tell you who you should call in this sales job. You call whoever you want in whatever order you want. You know, what we're giving her is trust. We're saying, we trust you a little bit more. We're going to give you that next level of trust. And that feels good, right? We could also give you feedback. So there's a lot of different things we could give you that are not external. There's nothing you could touch or cash in or hold, but they benefit you. And in HR, we do need to understand motivation, but we don't do it ourselves. One thing we can do is train. So training improves performance, productivity, profitability, quality, sales, revenue, satisfaction, employee satisfaction, retention. I mean, just across the board. Training is almost the most powerful thing that we can do in HR. And that really means something, because when we come into a company, one of the first things we should be doing in HR is analyzing how they're training people now and how much money are they spending? And are they even analyzing if their training was successful? Many companies don't. Many companies say, okay, here's our budget, 7,000 RMB. Well, I think this guy, Ethan, would be a good trainer. He's going to train them on how to communicate better. So, okay, we pay him, he comes in and does it, the end. We don't even know if it was good. You know, we can ask people, hey, Chloe, did you like the training? She says, yes, great. But that doesn't tell us anything. So revamping or fixing the training is really, really important. Now in HR, our job is to strengthen this training, make sure the training is strong, make sure the costs are as low as possible, and make sure we're following the trends. These are really our 3 things that we're doing with training. Our involvement. We want to make sure we use our internal resources. So what does that mean? Well, maybe Nicola is a professional yoga teacher. So why should we hire a yoga teacher when we could give Nicola a benefit, like a couple of days off or a promotion, or give him whatever, and then he will do the training for us. Maybe Crystal is a fashion designer. Maybe Christine is an artist. You know, all of these are beneficial trainings. We got to use our internal resources. We have to look at strategy. When I say strategy, Juan, when I say strategy, what are we talking about? What does strategy mean when we talk about strategy and HR?
Like the way you're going to implement the training?
In order to achieve what?
The business goals.
Okay, that's the key word, right? When you see on your test, anything about the word strategy, I mean goals. HR is involved in the goals. So for training, how would this be relevant? Well, what are our goals at CIP? We want people to be excellent communicators. Okay, training should be about that. We want people to be extremely organized. Okay, training should be about that. We want people to be creative. Okay, training should be about that. It's got to match our goals. We want to make sure that our training gives us skills or values that everybody can use right away. Now, it could be very broad, right? For example, giving people fashion training. Can you use fashion training right away? Sure. You're going to go home and tomorrow you're going to pick out clothes. Does it matter that it's related to your job? No, it's related to your life. And if our goal is to have satisfied employees, that could be very effective training. We want to make sure that the managers, we in HR need to be close with the managers, and we need to make sure what training is needed. We'll talk about this in a minute when we talk about the ADDIE process of creating a training. So that's our role in HR. Misha, you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, do you have knowledge?
Do I have knowledge?
Yes, do you have knowledge?
Let's see my notes.
I don't like that you can't answer this question. It's a
I
bad sign.
I guess I do, yeah.
You do, you have some knowledge. Landry, do you have knowledge? No? Uh-oh. Okay, well, at least Misha has knowledge. Misha, oh, Landry has knowledge too. Great. Landry, what kind of knowledge do you have?
Well, it's kind of broad.
Okay. Can you tell me any kind of knowledge you have?
I guess marketing.
Okay. Misha, can you tell me kind of knowledge you have?
I teach English.
Okay,
So-
certainly you all can understand what I'm saying, so you have some knowledge of English. Anybody else? What kind of knowledge? Tell me a kind of knowledge you have. Anybody tell me? Constance, what kind of knowledge do you have?
Literature.
Constance, do you know what to do when your mom gets angry?
Yes.
How'd you learn that? Did you read that in a book? And if so, can I borrow that book about what to do when moms get angry?
No, both, I guess. I don't know, some like
Okay. You learned it from,
You
how'd
actually
you
read
learn
a
it
book?
then?
no like some behavioral like researches and the fact that I'm living with her for
I would say experience, right? Like you get knowledge from experience.
Okay. Juan, did you read books on what to do if your mom gets mad?
No, I just got experience on how to deal with it better and better, like each time she got mad.
What's something else that you learned from experience?
Well, I like to watch football, so I know a lot about that.
Okay. Now, do you play football?
I did.
You did. So you have some knowledge of, like, I could watch football and I could read a book about football and I would learn about it. But I'm sure when you play it, you get a different kind of knowledge, more of a physical understanding.
Yes.
I mean, I could tell you a lot of things about how to lift weights, but I do not have a great amount of experiential knowledge in that subject. So we get knowledge kind of from these two places. We get it from learning, like reading or watching a video or going to a class, or we get it from experience. And in HR, we need to understand this idea of KM, also known as knowledge management. And that says, how does knowledge get learned? Because remember, if we're training people, We are bringing in knowledge. It could be knowledge about how to use Excel. It could be knowledge about the Chinese language, how to negotiate with Chinese people, fashion, time management, yoga, whatever it is, it's knowledge. And we're bringing it in. We want to make sure that the knowledge that we bring into this company is integrated into the employee's work, so that it helps them be flexible or respond to customer demands or respond to market opportunities. There has to be some way we bring this knowledge in. Now, let's say that, who did I just say? Camila? Oh, Camila. Camila, do you have knowledge about what to do if your friends get angry?
Not really, because like each friend gets angry in a different way. And
But
for
you have, okay, do you have knowledge about how to make friends?
not really, I think it's something that just comes.
So friends just magically come.
Yeah.
Okay, great. And do you, okay, fine, great. Friends. Now, can you share that knowledge with people? It sounds like you can't.
You can actually share the knowledge with people, because if you're a nice friend and you help those people in, like, let's say hard moments, then you're a good friend, and then those people want to be your friend. So that's some kind of knowledge.
Now, if I wanted you to share that information with me, do you think it would be better for you to be explicit, which means you'd write it down, or you'd record a video and show me? Or do you think it would be better for you to be tacit, which means I would hang out with you and you would show me in your experiences? Which would be a better way for you to give me this?
I think it would be tacit, because
Why?
by like seeing what I do, or like sharing some moments, you will actually get to know how, like, that I'm a good friend, let's
So
say.
you could be my friendship coach.
Yeah.
And I would hang out with you and learn how to be a good friend. Okay. Chandra, can you tell me some other kind of knowledge that really should be shared tacitly? What's another thing that you would really share with somebody through experiences or through being with you?
You mean in my shoes? In my...
I just mean, no, it doesn't have to be a real thing. Like, I'll give you an example. Oh, yeah? You have one?
Maybe like, I think when like teachers teach students, maybe they can use this tacit
Do
knowledge.
teachers usually, do you guys hang out with me all day long and that's how you learn law?
Oh, no. What I said was like, they also should have went through a lot of experiences of like how to deal with student like emotion, how to interact with them. It can be also
Okay, so I mean, that's true. I've never really received a book that said how to deal with students' emotions. And if I wanted to tell a new teacher, I would just tell them. I wouldn't write it down. That's true. Let's say that Jody, next week, no, make it next month. Next month, you are going to be in a fight for money with Harry, a boxing match. Okay, you and Harry are going to box next month. And Jody, I am your boxing coach. Okay, I'm a professional fighter. Would you rather I teach you to fight through books and videos or through experience?
Share the experience.
Absolutely, right? If you read 100 books on boxing, Harry could just hit you in the face and you fall down, right? But if you actually learn through experience, then you will get better at it. So tacit knowledge in HR is this kind of knowledge that we know the employees are going to learn it from training, and the only way that they're going to share it with each other is just by talking. We have to know when we train people, how is this knowledge going to get shared? Explicit knowledge is when we train people and they're going to write it down or they're going to record it, like in a handbook or in a training manual. Okay, so the next thing we want to talk about is the types, the steps in training. But I see we're already a little bit over time, so let's take a 10-minute break. Stop sharing for a minute. Let's take a 10-minute break and then we'll come back.
Sir, is it okay if I leave early? I have an early morning and it's like 2:44 here.
Up to you, sure.
Okay, thanks.
We are now recording again. So now we're going to actually start talking about the steps in the training process. So I'm going to give you a little example, and then I'm going to put you into groups, and I'd like you to discuss this. So let's look at it first, and then I'll put you into groups to talk about it. So you're hired as a manager of a Chinese real estate company, and they want their employees to receive training, but they don't know. So here are your questions like, who should be trained? What should the training be? And here's really a key one. How do you measure if it was effective? That's really, really critical in training. Because in HR, you can kind of say, well, train the managers or train the salespeople. Like, okay, you know, what should the training be? I mean, that's a little harder, but okay, train them in communication or decision-making or diversity. But the real question is number 3. How in the world do you measure if training was effective? So who, what, and how to measure it? Okay, so those are my questions. And I want to put you guys in groups and talk about it. I'll put you in 3 groups. Okay, so take a few minutes, go into these groups and discuss this question.
We should train in like the sales team, because I think
if we're HR, we train. I mean, if we're HR training, shouldn't we like train other HR departments?
Well, you can hire a trainer. You don't have to do it yourself.
Oh, okay.
But I think that the easier, like if we train the sales team, so it would be easier to measure if it's is effective, because we can see the increasing of the sales, right? Any thought?
Effectiveness. I forgot. Of an employee.
Oh, I have
Like
no
to
idea.
decide like who. You could basic on that. Like who did well, depending on like quantitative measures.
Yeah, we can start by testing to see like what employees don't have like the skills that we want, and then like train these people.
Yeah, I
So
agree.
on how to train, use the KPI thing on like how. Like if it's
Good
how
point.
if it's like how we choose like who, we can like train with that also.
And also, if it's relevant to their job as well, you don't want to train everyone if it's not what they're going to be doing in their jobs.
Also. So that could respond to what?
Also maybe knowledge about the law, like estate law, because they have to, you know, like pass certain tests. I don't know in China, but in Korea, like you should be able to know all the knowledge related to the law. So maybe,
Yeah, is that part of the training though?
I don't know, but just for training, they can just like, yeah, keep, you know, like letting them know that like what kind of law they should apply.
We measure this. We can give them some sort of test, not test.
Like the personality test, projective personality test.
how do it measuring if it's effective? Like all these training things, how is it effective?
Maybe they're like result, like how many, like how many client they, like how do I say, like
how many clients they
How many people like sign the contract?
yeah, or like sales and
like teach them.
So like for the evaluation of the training, there's you can do like assessments after the training. You know, like right, you could do one after the training right after, and then you could do another one like a couple months or a couple weeks after, things like that, just to make sure that they keep the information and they know how to use it. It's not only like, if they know the information, but also like how to apply it at work.
Okay, so qualitative, like with KPI, quantitative with like, I don't know, after sales, like after the training, and what you said, Anais, like how, like to test them after that also, after the training.
David, do you want specific answers or?
No, I think what you guys are saying is good. I think everybody is pretty much discussed it. Okay, let's go back into the main room. Okay, good. So tell me, Nicola, how do you decide who to train?
Yeah, so basically for us, the who to train is the tricky question because, for example, we at the beginning we said like maybe sales team would be good to training because we can easily measure if the training is being effective through the sales increasing or decreasing.
That's true, but what if the sales team is already doing well?
Yes. So
that's true. You can measure that. Misha, what were you going to say?
Sorry. Don't you look like at a discrepancy between how they do perform and how they should be performing? I forgot what that's called.
Skills gap.
Yes, the skills gap. That's right.
Sure. So, okay, so this idea of there's a difference between how they're performing now, it could be sales, marketing, anything, and how they should be performing. And maybe there's a gap between this. So how do we know how they're performing now? I mean, we need to analyze this gap between, now for sales, like you said, that might be the easiest because you just look at the quantity they've sold. How would we measure that for another job, for accounting? How do you measure the quality now versus where we think they should be? I mean, how do you measure the quality of an accountant's work?
Maybe from accountants, like if there's kind of errors or mistakes in the journals, in the books.
Okay, maybe.
I think it's easy to measure.
How would you measure, what about marketing?
Yeah, we was talking about like customer satisfaction or customer recommendations,
Sure, that's true. Any other ways anybody
like
thinks?
sales?
Sorry?
For marketing is sales?
Maybe, but I mean, you also have salespeople. So how do you separate? Did the salespeople do a good job and the marketing did a bad job, or the marketing did a good job and the salespeople did a bad job?
We could do, I don't know, maybe like a focus group to see if the advertisements that the marketing group is actually making, if they're having the impact that we want on the customers.
Okay, maybe. We could ask the customers. The reason that this is a hard question to answer is that we haven't learned it yet. It's our next topic, which is appraisal. How do you know if somebody's doing a good job? There's like 7 or 8 different ways we have in HR to judge the performance of someone. And we haven't learned that yet. So I think you guys are coming up with good answers. since of course you're not telling me the specific methods that are, some are quantitative, some are qualitative. Please remind us, Harry, what's the difference between qualitative and quantitative?
One is opinions and the other one's like data, numbers.
Which is which?
Qualitative is opinions and quantitative is numbers.
Okay, good. So we have different ways to measure people's performance, but you're right that how do we decide who to train is who is not at their level of performance where they should be. And I know in one of the groups, people had mentioned KPI. Who mentioned it? Can someone tell me what is KPI?
Key performance indicator.
Okay, good. Key performance indicator. So what is this? This is an indication that you've discussed with your boss that you both know this is an indication of your performance. And in the next subject, after we finish training, we'll talk about how we develop that sort of benchmark of good performance. Because obviously for sales, it could be a number of products that you're going to sell. But how do we do that for marketing or advertising or HR or research and development or any of the other jobs where you're not actually producing units of sales that we can measure quantitatively? So we need this KPI, we need this skills gap. Now that's who. How do we decide what we're going to train? Christine, how do we decide what kind of training that we will buy for HR?
If it's for the sales team, then like with selling skills, communication, knowing all the knowledge about, I don't know, like about the houses and the area, about the paperwork and all the laws that's needed for like a state and yeah, maybe in the specific country.
Sure, that's reasonable for the sales team. Crystal, what about for like other groups, advertising, marketing?
It's the same. First, have to analyze what is lacking, like understand your employee problem first. Like if they don't know like about Chinese market, then you have to do a little bit of research or get the consultants to teach you the marketplace and the culture.
Sure. So again, this same idea. We need to analyze the skill gap. We need to know what is the knowledge gap. What should they know that they don't know? How do we find this out? Surveys, questionnaires, interviews, the same way we find out anything in HR. There's never going to be another way. There's never a magic way that we find things out. We find out what information we need from this job. How do we know that? Job description. We know exactly what they should know from the job description. Job requirements matrix. So we know what they need to know. And then we ask them, we give them a survey, a quiz, a test, an interview. We find out if they know. If they don't, then we need to train people in that. Now, the last one, how do we measure the effectiveness of the training? Any thoughts on that? Ethan, what do you think? How do we measure the effectiveness? Ethan? Did you freeze?
Froze, yes.
I'm really not too sure, just because like as soon as you're finished at training, I would think that my crummy answer is that it takes time. You need to wait to be able to see if it was actually effective and how you would test it. I think we mentioned it. I really don't know. I'm just dancing around.
A lot of companies are just going to try to do memorization, right? That's it. They'll just give a quiz after. Did you learn the stuff? And that's what a lot of companies do because they don't know what else to do. And that's a big problem. That is one of the benefits of actually studying HR, understanding how to find out more about methods to evaluate the effectiveness or the ROI. Chloe, did you have any? Oh, Anais, yeah?
You could compare employees, like the ones that did get the training versus the ones that didn't, to see if they're performing any better.
Okay, so you could use like a gold standard. You could use a control group who didn't get the training and another group that was trained. Now, the problem with that is it takes time, but it certainly does help you understand, If we're going to train some people in decision making, train another group, don't train them in that, and then see what happens. Sure. Okay, good. So what we're talking about here, and I don't think I'll keep you guys late today, but what we're talking about here is the ADDIE process. So this was created post-World War II. And really it started during World War II. And the reason it started then, as I said in the video, is at that time, you had thousands and thousands of new soldiers coming into the military. And very, very quickly, they realized they did not have time to train everybody or figure out what would be the kind of training that everybody needs, what department should everybody go into. They needed, and this is the same thing we saw with selection, they needed very quickly to decide who should do what job, and they also needed to figure out how do we train these people. Now, some of the training was obviously in how to use the weapons or how to, build a trench or do different aspects of warfare. But there was a lot of other training, whether it was language or communication or negotiating enemy territory or different kinds of things. So this was created, this ADDIE method. So basically, and we'll go through these steps, but basically there's 5 steps, but I put 2 of them together. So first is analyze, and that's what most of you have talked about. We'll talk in a minute about what is a needs analysis, but we understand the KSAs similar to the KPIs. We know what knowledge and skill are required. We know this from the job description and the competency model, and we have all this information. So we need to analyze what knowledge and skill is required, and then compare that to what is the knowledge and skill they have now, and see, is there this gap, this space between what they have and what it should be? And if so, we need to do training to close the gap. Second, we need to design and develop. What's the difference between these two? Well, design is like a skeleton. It's a very, very basic outline of, I'm going to train them in 3 days, 5 hours per day. We're going to cover these 6 topics. That's the design. We'll use face-to-face, and then at the end, there'll be an online test, and I'll put people in groups. That's it. That would be the design. But how do you actually develop that? Involves figuring out what are our objectives for the training, what is the content for the training, what is the budget for the training, and it has to be SMART, S-M-A-R-T, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. That's where we really develop it. So designing the training is kind of figuring out, okay, who are we training? What are we training? What's our overall plan for how many days? Our method, is it face-to-face or e-learning? Will it be done on the internet? What kind of materials will we give people? And then we really develop it and get it ready to do. Implementation is when we actually get, either we train people or we hire someone to train the target group. And evaluation, this key important point, is how we assess or judge if the training was effective. So these are our 5 basic elements. And let's start, I think we have time today still to do the first one at least. So step 1, analysis. How do we do this? Well, we start with a needs analysis. Now, what I want you to know in this process, part of this, I want you to know 5 questions. I don't know why I held my hand up like you don't know the number 5. 5 questions. So here's the first question that I need you guys to know. First question. Is there anything else other than training that could bring about the desired outcome? That's question number 1 that you need to know. And when I say you need to know, I mean it'll be on your final exam. So the first question is, and I'll come back to this, the first question is, do you need training at all? What are you trying to achieve? Is it a sales problem? Is it an advertising problem? Is it a marketing problem? Is it a culture problem? Are people not motivated? What's the problem? Because a lot of times management will come to HR and they'll say, we need training. And then here's the problem. Management comes to your office and says, listen, the employees are coming in late, they're leaving early, they're leaving garbage around, we need training. Now that's not necessarily a problem that training can fix. So if you give them training and the outcome is not achieved, management is going to blame the training. And as we said before, training is critical. It's really important that we be able as HR professionals to have access to training, to provide training. It's a really important function that we do in HR. Training might fail because of the managers. You can't just tell a manager you're not doing your job. Training also might fail because the employees feel frustrated because you train them, but they can't use the skills they learn because the manager won't let them. I saw this in China a lot of times, where they would train the employees in a skill, and then the managers would micromanage. What does that mean, Camila, to micromanage? Are you familiar with that word, Camila? I can't hear you. No?
Sorry, I didn't listen to the question.
Okay, you mean you didn't hear the question?
Yeah, I
You
didn't hear
cannot
it.
say I didn't listen to the question. That's not nice.
Sorry, yeah.
What does micromanage mean?
I'm not sure, sorry.
Okay, Constance, what does micromanage mean?
On a small group of people, like focusing on
It's not about a small
Yeah.
group of people.
like details more than the overall.
Okay, that's definitely closer.
It's like when you like closely monitor everything someone does. Like for example,
Yeah.
if you like come at 6, or like I can like pick you up or something, like things like that.
I'll give you an example that I experienced in China of micromanaging. So I was working for a TV show, and I was the creative director of the show. And the CEO was, this show was in Shanghai, and the CEO was in Beijing. Now they had writers, directors, producers, lights, cameras, makeup, everything, you know, and the CEO is in Beijing and is handling big multi-million-dollar deals. The CEO called the makeup person, it was a girl who did the makeup, and she said, every time you do makeup on anyone, you have to take a photograph of them and WeChat it to me so I can approve their makeup every day, every time you do anybody's makeup. Now, Constance, do you think that's a realistic level of management?
It's too much time consuming.
It's too time consuming, absolutely. Because this woman who does makeup, how does she feel when the boss says that?
That she does not her job well and she needs someone like on her watching over her shoulder.
Yeah,
when she's
exactly.
doing
She doesn't feel like she's trusted. And that's the problem with micromanagement. And it happens a lot in China, that bosses will control every aspect of the business. And if this is happening, it doesn't matter what training you give people, because the problem isn't the skill gap. It will never close from the training because they'll never be allowed to use their skills. So really this first question, you know, this is the first step in a serious training program. We have to make sure that training is really the best option. So tell me, Christine, how can we find out if training is the best option?
I'm not sure. You can, I don't know. I'm not sure about that.
What do you think, Harry? How can we find out if training is the best option? I mean, training is so expensive and it takes so much time. And if you train people and then they can't do it, they're going to be super frustrated. So we don't want to just throw 10,000 RMB at something and then the employees are frustrated and angry. I mean, we got to know. What do you think, Chandra? How do we find out if training is the best thing to do? The answer is a lot more simple than you guys imagine.
You can compare the result.
Well, but then we have to do the training. Any other thoughts? Anybody? What's the most simple way we could find out if we need to train people?
You just need the employers need to make organizational needs assessment. You just need to know what they need in their organization, and also do like a task needs analysis, I think it's called. Just like,
sure.
Or
we can also yeah.
We can also ask the candidates if they're already trained or not. If they're already trained, then we can hire them, and we don't need to train them again.
Well, we're not talking about hiring. These are people who already work for us. You know, this isn't selection, this is training. So they already work for us. Now, what Anais said, this organizational needs assessment, this task assessment, we'll learn that soon. But I would say even more simple, kind of what Bella said. If I wanted to know if I should train people, I would just ask them. Is the problem that you don't know how to do this, or is the problem the manager? That's it. You just ask. There's really nothing more than that.
You mean ask to employees, right?
Yes, absolutely. Now, if you want it, if you don't think they'll tell you the truth, give them an anonymous survey so that nobody knows who said what. But that's it. I mean, if I want to know, hey, should the teachers at CIP get more training in how to use Zoom? Is that the problem? Or what if every time I want to use Zoom, Eileen says I have to call her first and I have to get her permission every single time? Is the problem Zoom? No, you just ask me. I tell you, Zoom's not the problem. The problem's the manager. So it's really not more complicated than that, but we have to figure out, is the training the problem? That's our first question. So we already looked at this example. Let's look at this again. You're hired as a manager for this Chinese real estate company. Now here's a new problem. The problem is the employees often spend all day away from the office, right? It's real estate. So they're away from the office because it's real estate. They're showing customers apartments and houses, so they're away. But you in HR, you don't know if the employees are out showing apartments or if they're just taking the day off. And so the managers say, listen, we don't know if the employees are out showing apartments or taking the day off. And the manager comes to you and says, hey, you need to train them. How could you fix this problem maybe without training? Any thoughts?
You could have the employees have the people they show a house sign a form, like, you know, letting your manager know that you did show a form to a house to these people, so that they know that during the day how many houses you showed, so you can account for like how much time you were away from the office.
Sure, that's possible. Have them sign a form. Chloe, any other thoughts? How would you know? How would you find out if the employees were lying to you or really showing apartments?
You can use, in one of my previous job, we had like some cards that we needed to scan every morning before going to lunch, coming back from lunch, and then when we were leaving.
And did you enjoy that?
No.
Okay, so that is maybe a solution. Maybe not the most enjoyable one, but it is a solution. It might be better than making everybody go to a training about, I mean, what would you train them on? This would be like integrity training or honesty training. I mean, which would you prefer, that you scan the card, or that for the next 3 weekends you have honesty training, which implies that you're not honest? You know, it's hard to know. Both of those sound bad. Any other thoughts, Misha? No? How about Ethan? Any thoughts? How do you find out where they are, what they're doing?
You can do this, you said fake client.
Like a secret shopper, like a secret customer?
Yeah, so something like that. You
Okay.
can observe them.
Maybe. That's going to cost us a lot of money too.
But less than training, you know.
Maybe. Any other thoughts?
Well, you can ask them for daily reports, maybe with like evidence, pictures, videos.
Sure. I mean, definitely, I'd say definitely in the modern world, every time they go to a place, you could just ask them to take a photo of it and send it to you. Again, it's tough because then they feel like you don't trust them.
But couldn't you word it in a way that it's not like you're kind of pushing it on them that they, oh, we don't trust you. It's that like for our own records to ensure with clients that we.
I think that would be smart.
Showed them. Yeah. You just the way you're kind of.
You don't say like, send us a photo so we know you're not lying.
Yeah.
Yeah. Phrasing it in a nice way would be better. Yeah. Andrew?
Maybe they could have customer satisfaction survey just after the meet with the
That's
customer.
a nice way to do it. We're not saying we don't trust you. We just want you to have good customer satisfaction. So right after the apartment showing, the customer will fill out the WeChat, maybe. I feel like you guys living in China are missing probably the easiest one.
Do you mean tracking them?
Yeah, just GPS
for the
track
location.
them.
I didn't want to say that. I felt like that would be invading their privacy, but it was in the back of my head the whole time. Like, just
Yeah,
check
I mean, it's China. Just track their bike, track their phone, track their jacket. You know, in China now they have in some schools for kids, like the primary school, they have tracking devices in their clothes. Yeah, just track them. All right, we'll stop there for today. So the test is this Friday. I will give it to you, and I would expect it to be done by Monday, midnight, Beijing time. Whenever you take it, you'll have 3 hours. It's a 3-hour test from whenever you begin. But I'll give you this, you know, Friday morning to Monday midnight. Are there any questions right now before we go?
Is it like not essay, right? It's short answers?
It will be 5 short answer questions.
Oh.
I just wanted to say something on behalf of CIPSA, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
I think you guys all know we have this event coming up the 29th. So it's going to be just like a game night kind of thing for Halloween. So you guys can come and join. I think we're going to be playing 2 games. It's going to be Mafia or Lugau. I don't know which name you know. And a lot of you chose Among Us as well. So these games are going to be.
I didn't hear the second one. You said Mafia and what?
Among Us. It's this,
I don't know what that is, but I keep seeing it on the internet.
It's kind of weird because it's like a visualized version of Mafia. So you just basically have to find who the imposter is because they kill everyone, which is what we do in Mafia as well.
I thought that was called Assassin. Okay, I need to go learn what Among Us is because everybody keeps making Among Us cakes and putting them on Reddit.
It's really
okay.
fun.
That's fun. So Anais, you're now the host of this meeting, and I will see you guys later if there's any questions about the test or anything. Oh, by the way, oh no, there's no quiz in this class. Okay, so that's it. I will see you guys next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.